A different negotiation related to that funeral. We were picking out a casket. There was a nice oak casket, and I asked the price of that, and it seemed quite high to me. Maybe it was $7,000 at the time. This is 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. I said, well, I like that casket, but I don't object to the prices of anything else. But if you want us to do everything here, for the rest of this business, I need $1,000 off that casket. And he's like, I've run this funeral home for 35 years, and nobody's ever said something like this to me. And I said, well, surprise, today's the day that you're having that negotiation. He said, well, what do you mean? Like you're going to get a casket from somewhere else? He said, you're going to buy one in a Chicago alley or something like that? And I said, absolutely, I will buy a casket in an alley in Chicago, but I'm not going to pay $7,000 for it. We're going to pay no more than $6,000. And he called me a smart ass in front of my family. My grandmother was crying. My mom was crying. My dad, who was like a pretty hardened criminal, he was even looking at me kind of funny. But we paid $6,000, not $7,000. I got my $1,000 discount on the casket. I was quite pleased with myself about that.
If you don't have $1 million yet, you're living a much lesser life than what could be easily available to you with the right guidance. My head coach has freed up a few spots in his calendar to hold one-on-one strategy calls with the highest quality applicants. If you're doing well already, and you're looking to accelerate your momentum and do even better, click the link in the description now and apply for your strategy session. More at the end of this video.
Yuval says, great to see both you and Jake. What was a memorable negotiation that truly tested your skills? What did you do, and how did it end, and what have you learned? See you in February. Negotiation is a lifestyle. People don't understand that. Negotiation isn't something that you do once in a while. Negotiation is a lifestyle. It's something you do every day, and you have to have a tolerance to social pressure. If you're uncomfortable to ask for the things that you want, it's hard to get the things that you want. If you don't ask, you can't have it. So, and you have to make sure that, a negotiation isn't like, you, I win. High-level negotiators, people that are, let me start in a different foundation. The greatest value that you can get from relationships, it's impossible to get it today. It's impossible to get it right now. So the most valuable relationships in your life are going to be long-term and mutually beneficial, which is exactly what you and I were just talking about. The greatest relationships in your life is not going to be negotiating something right now. It's going to be, long-term, mutually valuable, mutually beneficial relationships have the most value. So I kind of think about that. If I'm negotiating with a person, I'm not just thinking like, how do I beat the shit out of this guy financially and take everything I can today, and he feels like shit about it, because probably there's not going to be a lot of future opportunity for behaving that way, So I'm thinking to myself, what's the bigger picture? Is there more value that could be created in the future? And how do I help this person to get what they want, where I'm going to feel good about it too? Hopefully it creates a bridge to a better future that we could do something cool together. So there's this. Now there are some transactional relationships. So there's two different types of relationships for negotiation we should talk about. Are we negotiating with a long-term relationship in mind, or are you at a flea market in Bangkok and you want the cheapest price on 20 T-shirts? That's a different type of negotiation. So if we're having a transactional relationship where I'm never going to see this person again, I don't give a shit about them, they don't give a shit about me, but we might be able to come to terms on something. Then you're going to be more aggressive and more firm. If you're thinking about a long-term ongoing relationship, you might not want to get everything you can today, because it might be more costly in the future where you're violating trust or making that person feel like they didn't get a great deal. They're not going to be happy about it in the aftermath. So I think you got to think about that first. In terms of a specific memorable negotiation, what comes to mind at the moment, which was a transactional relationship, is I was in my early 20s. I was 21 or so, 21, 22, and my grandfather died. And my grandfather he was an utterly middle-class guy. He was a construction worker that he ran like cranes and end loaders on construction job sites, like building highways and various infrastructure. And utterly middle-class guy. Maybe he had an 8th grade education. I don't think he ever went to college, or ever high school even. I don't think he ever went to high school. But a nice guy, and he was a good grandpa, and I was happy to have the guy around. He's kind of like my dad, more than my dad was. My dad wasn't there, And when he died, I remember I was with my mother and father and my grandmother, whose husband just died, and we're making funeral arrangements. And a few things that happened during those funeral arrangements. One negotiation was with the church, where my grandfather went to church, and they said they wanted to have the service on a specific day, at a specific time. And I said, no, I have a statistics exam at that time. And they said, well, tell your teacher, and they'll reschedule the test for you. And I said, no, I'm going to take the test right on time, right on schedule, like normal, and we're going to have to shift this a couple hours later in the day. And we're going to do it, maybe we're discussing 11 a.m. versus 1:30 p.m. or something like that. I said, we're going to do it in the afternoon. And he says, well, we don't do them at that time. And I said, well, then we're not going to do it at your church. If you're going to accommodate the schedule that for the family, and if you don't want to accommodate the schedule for the family, then we won't do it at all here. And so he thought I was a terrible person, but he gave me exactly what I asked for. I'm not a religious person at all. I find it absurd, really. But he was. My grandfather was, and he would have liked to have done things at that church. But I wasn't going to change my the final exam schedule to accommodate this, or midterm. It must have been a midterm exam. And I went and got an A on my exam, and then I went and gave a nice little speech at my grandfather's funeral, and so on. A different negotiation related to that funeral was at the funeral home itself. We were picking out a casket, and there was a nice oak casket with some satin liner, and it looked nice. It was not, extremely fancy, but it was a very nice. And that's the one that the family gravitated to. And I asked the price of that, and I forget what the numbers were, but it seemed quite high to me. Maybe it was $7,000 at the time. This is 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. Maybe $7,000 or something like that. And I said, well, I like that casket, but I don't object to the prices of anything else. But if you want us to do everything here, the rest of this business, I need $1,000 off that casket. And the owner of the funeral home, he thought, he didn't even understand for a moment. And when I made it clear to him, I was like, we're going to pay $6,000, not $7,000 for the casket. Everything else fine, but you want $1,000 off that casket if we're going to do this business. And he's like, I've run this funeral home for 35 years, and nobody's ever said something like this to me. And I said, well, surprise, today's the day that you're having that negotiation. And he said, well, what do you mean? Like you're going to get a casket from somewhere else? He said, this is the price of the casket. I said, well, then we're not going to buy that casket, and we're probably going to go to a different funeral home. And he says, you're going to buy a different casket? You're going to buy one, in an alley, you're going to buy one in a Chicago alley or something like that? And I said, absolutely, I will buy a casket similar to this in an alley in Chicago, but I'm not going to pay $7,000 for it. We're going to pay no more than $6,000. So if we need to bring it here with a pickup truck, that'd be just fine, but we're not going to pay that price. And he called me a smartass in front of my family. My grandmother was crying, my mom was crying. My dad, who was like a pretty hardened criminal, he was even looking at me kind of funny. But we paid $6,000, not $7,000. I got my $1,000 discount on the casket, and I was quite pleased with myself about that. I still am. That's more than half my lifetime ago, and I still think about that on occasion. It's one of my favorite negotiations because other people wouldn't even ask for such a thing. They wouldn't even think to ask. So saved $1,000 on a casket. But the main point I'd make to you is negotiation is a lifestyle. If you think that you're going to avoid social pressure, you're going to avoid conflict, you're never going to have words with anybody, and then you're going to go into a significant negotiation. If I can't get free ice water when I go to Europe, there's places you go in Germany or Austria or Italy. A lot of places in Europe, they want you to buy bottled water, and that's maybe a last negotiation I'll mention is they want you to buy bottled water. And if I can't get free water is a substance that's so abundant, people shit in it. It's the substance that we shit in to flush the toilet and make the shit go away. That's how abundant fresh water is, all right? So if I can't negotiate free water from a European chode, how the are you going to negotiate something that's important, something that's millions of dollars? How would you be any good at that? So if you can't tolerate the social pressure to get free water, sometimes I got to go to 3-4 different restaurants because they won't give me the water. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've gone to 3-4 restaurants and I'll move 8 or 10 people around the city with me and go to it. Well, let's walk over here. Oh, let's try the restaurant across the street. And I'm shameless about it. I don't care if somebody doesn't like me. I don't care if they think it's extreme or uncomfortable. I'm not paying for water. Yeah, if you can't negotiate free water, if you can't, then you can't negotiate a casket. And if you can't negotiate the casket, then you can't negotiate things that matter, that are millions of dollars and would be meaningful savings over time. So I think tolerance to social pressure is very important. Having some creativity, have a calmness and creativity. But also keep in mind, like, is this a transactional relationship? Are we beating this guy with a club right now to get the very best price and never talk to him again? Or is this a long-term relationship where I would treat that very differently and be a lot more concerned about my counterparty's interests and make sure that they're, not only satisfied but happy, and there's a good path forward for us. How do you think about negotiations?
You're much better at negotiating than me. Hanging out with you, I'm like, damn, you're good at negotiating. It's skills I need to work on. I don't negotiate near enough, to be honest. I negotiate a little bit, but with basic things in life, you have to negotiate some, but I'm not very good at driving those good deals. I've been watching you realize I have to learn to get a lot better at it. Because you'll always just ask for money off, and a lot of time they give it to you. Yeah. I was like, oh, you just saved a couple $1,000s. Like, I need $3,000 off this or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just everything they'll ask. And, all the construction work you're getting done, like closets. I'm like, okay, you literally just ask for money off.
Yeah. I mean, some of those things, one of our friends, Claudia had, I went to look at some stone. We had a lot of nice stone around here. So she's looking for slabs of stone for her countertops and to do the showers and in her home, and, fabulous big slabs of stone. And we go to the stone retailer, not retailer, wholesaler, whatever. We go to the place where they have the big slabs of stone, a warehouse in Vegas. And the guy's saying, oh, bring your contractor in. We'll give the contractor can get a little discount, this and that. And I said, don't say another word. I was not nice about it. I was very firm. But I had to do that. I wasn't that I was upset. I just knew the person that I was speaking to, he's so used to this idea, contractor, and not negotiating with the end purchaser. He's so used to that. They're not even used to quoting prices to the end consumer. And I had to get him out of that mindset.
Yeah, you're the one buying,
Yeah, so I had to be, I couldn't be nice about that. Mm-hmm. I said, get this idea out of your head about a contractor. It's like, there's no contractor. Yeah. I'm the contractor. She's the contractor. We're the ones buying this shit. I said, don't say another word about the contractor. So what do they get for a discount? What's a normal contractor discount? And he said, well, it's as much as 10 or 15%. I'm like, well, then she gets more. All right, so she gets 20%. If a contractor gets 10 or 15%, she gets at least 20%. And if she does any promotional shit for you, she gets more. And the guy was a little, flustered and concerned about that. But he also knew I was the type of guy that would buy some shit.
They need to spend some money,
Yeah. And then I asked her later, she took care of the rest of the negotiation. I was just there that one time and had that one kind of harsh conversation. I asked her later when I seen she bought the stone, I said, how much did they discount for that stone? She said 20%.
Yeah. That's what I know too. You're very firm in your negotiation, which I'm firm in most aspects of my life. So that's something that just makes sense when you negotiate. You're firm. This is the price I'm going to get it. You might negotiate a little bit, but usually not much from what you go for.
Well, I'm also not trying to be an extreme. So one of the reasons I can be firm about something is I'm not asking for something that's absurd.
That's true. 20% you figured was reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're selling the shit for twice what they paid for it.
Yeah.
So now instead of having 100% profit, they get a 60% profit. But if we're going to buy multiple slabs of stone, that's still a good deal for them. We're buying more than a normal house would buy. So even with a 40% off of their normal margins, they're still making more money than they would make with a normal client. They're just selling a few extra slabs to that person.
They'd be stupid not to do the deal with you.
Yeah. So, just as an example, maybe if they normally made, $10,000, now they're going to sell twice as much stuff, but instead of making $20,000, they're going to make 12 or 13. Well, they still made 12 or 13,000 doing a transaction instead of the 10 that they would make with a normal house. But she still got a better deal because normally they'd get a $20,000 markup on that much product, and now they're getting 12,000 or something instead. Just as an example, So, I'm not trying to ask for. I'm not trying to be abusive to the other person, but I'm not going to pay retail for. I spent $1 million on stone over here. And I negotiated that up front. I said, I'm going to pay 15% over your price. I want to see the invoices. What did you pay for everything? I'm going to pay 15% margin, but I'm going to be the biggest customer of your lifetime. And I bought 130 or so slabs. But I spent over $1 million with those people. They still made it, they probably made a couple $100,000. They made more than 150. So they made something close to $200,000 working with me. Is she mad at me? Is the business owner mad at me? I mean, I just bought her a super nice, luxury vehicle, or a couple of them maybe, So they shouldn't be mad about it. We did the business.
You watch this video all the way through, and that tells me you're dedicated to learning more and earning far above average outcomes in your life. Congratulations for that. But now it's time to take action. If you could have earned those results by yourself, you would have done it already. My head coach has opened up a few spots on his high-demand calendar for an in-person, one-on-one strategy session to help you. On this call, we'll give you pragmatic advice that you can implement tonight to get laser-focused on the right metrics and leave mediocrity far behind in your past. Click that link right now in the description below and apply for your call immediately. Do it now.